Hello folks and welcome back to my channel. It's another Chatty Get Ready With Me. Today's is spicy, which wasn't my original plan, but I just can't resist getting spicy in these, I guess. So I originally wanted to come in here and do a Chatty Get Ready With Me talking about some of my post-top surgery feelings and like complicated non-binary emotions navigating being a year post-top surgery. But then I made my Instagram post today, and as y'all well know now, I pre-filmed these, and I'm posting this on the same day that I posted an Instagram infographic about piercing courses. Basically these like 2-week and sometimes 2-day and 3-day long courses where people are like, oh yeah, come take this class and then you will be a piercer and you'll just be a fully trained piercer and you will just know how to pierce and you can start a piercing business in 2 days or in 3 days or in 2 weeks. And so I made this little infographic being like, hey, so you cannot fully learn how to be a trained piercer in only a couple of days or a couple of weeks. And aside from all of the information that would not go over and all of the things that you would not learn, none of your work has even healed. Like, an earlobe piercing at best is going to take 3 to 5 months to fully heal for someone. So you don't even know if the earlobes you did were done correctly and safely and with good anatomy and with good placement to where they could heal, let alone, I'm sure you're learning cartilage piercings there. Those are 9 months to a year away from being healed enough for you to know that they have healed. Like, part of doing piercings is not just poking a hole in someone's body and putting jewelry in it. It's also knowing that it will heal. And so I don't think you can say that you have finished your training or education or you are a piercer if you've never seen a singular piercing that you have done healed. Like, that's just it, right? Like, I think you have to know that your work heals. So you need to be doing this training and this education long enough that you know your stuff heals. I think an orthodontist should have to have successfully completed bracing a certain amount of patients and know that they actually fixed their teeth, not just put one set of braces on once and went, I'm an orthodontist, I can fix your teeth. We have to know, what if they moved your teeth in the wrong place? What if they moved your teeth in a way that made it hard for you to eat or speak or do something? Like, we gotta know that this stuff is functional, that this works, and the same goes for body piercing. And I was not expecting this post to get as much pushback as it did. But there was quite a bit of pushback, and a very interesting angle of pushback was folks who were like, oh, well, in my state, you only have to have 200, 300, 400 hours of training time before you can be a piercer. So that's 4 weeks of 10-hour shifts. Obviously, like, my stuff isn't going to be healed in 4 weeks, but like, why should we listen to you telling us that we should train for a year when regulations in my state are super lax? Oh, my friend, my sweet summer child, let us travel back through time to answer this question. Let us go very far back to 1873, 1874, late 1800s. I could probably Google it and remember the exact year. My best guess off the top of my head is 73 or 74. That could be wrong. That could be woefully wrong. It could be 1890. I know 1893 was this first census that showed tattooed members of the American military. Listen, I was never particularly good at dates in history class and that form of memorization. But in the late 1800s, something called the Indian Act, as well as, and also the Code of Indian Offenses, and these acts made things like traditional tattooing and piercing illegal for Indigenous Americans to partake in. And for clarification's sake, in this video, I'm specifically talking about the United States of America. I'm not talking about any other places because I'm not as familiar with those places' history, but specifically in the United States of America, these laws were written, and it it basically made it nearly impossible for Indigenous Americans to practice their own tribal culture and their own tribal rituals. Tattoos, piercings, body modifications, speaking their own language. There was an entire movement to eradicate these cultures and to remove them. And it was unfortunately very successful in many places. And one of the areas where it was making it very difficult for people to get tattoos and piercings. Now, tattoos followed a little bit of a different route than piercings did, because tattoos had been a practice for sailors for hundreds and hundreds of years already. And some of our earliest examples of actual cultural appreciation and exchange in tattooing came from sailors traveling places and spending time with Indigenous populations and opting to get tattooed as a memory of those travels. Tattooing also became big in the military. We actually have a census that shows that something wild, like 30% of members of the American military back in like the late 1800s, early 1900s had at least one tattoo. And these areas legitimized the work of tattooing, because if you were a military person with a tattoo to commemorate your service, that made sense. Tattooing was very big with gangs, particularly white nationalist gangs and organizations and biker affiliates. And people were kind of like willing to look the other way for that type of tattooing. But piercing didn't really have the same appeal. I mean, like, a tattoo is nice because if you're getting it like traveling in a port, it's healed in a week or two and you don't have to worry about it. A piercing is a lot more work, and like making that hole in your body is a lot more offensive to puritanical values than a tattoo is in many cases. As anyone who has had to argue with their parents about that can attest. So piercing took a different route of getting started. Piercing came out of queer and leather subcultures, specifically looking for like sexual enhancement through body piercing, and particularly genital piercing. Which is why historically piercing has always been associated with queer folks in North America, and with queer movements, and tattooing has a long history in the military and in biker spaces and in gang spaces. But piercing was always often viewed as more counterculture and more different and more weird and more freaky than tattooing, to the point that in 1970, like 8 or 9, maybe 1981 or 2, somewhere around that time, late 70s, early 80s, piercing was not welcome at major tattoo conventions. Like, major tattoo conventions specifically voted that they wouldn't have piercing at their convention, because essentially they were like, we don't want that weird queer shit here, and we're not interested in being associated with that. And, you know, fast forward to modern times, and we have a lot of regulations and a lot of requirements about tattoo and piercing in the workplace. We have a lot of, you know, legal systems surrounding it, and a lot of it is rooted in these systems of colonization and in these systems of making it impossible for Indigenous people to access this craft. And I think tattooing has become a little bit more widely acceptable a little bit faster, and piercing still hasn't. And a big part, in my opinion, of why so many regions in America have such lax laws in regards to tattoo and body piercing, why it's widely underregulated, why there's little like structural safety practices and things like that, is because a lot of lawmakers in a lot of places would rather pretend that people just simply aren't getting tattooed and pierced, or of the view that people simply shouldn't get tattooed and pierced, because of these same deeply structural, long-held beliefs that tattoo and piercing is savage behavior and isn't a part of proper society and isn't polite or isn't respectful or isn't any of these terrible respectability policies surrounding it. And a lot of this comes from early legislation designed to eradicate cultural practice of Indigenous North Americans. And I speak about this as someone, when I was much younger and much more hopeful in this industry, worked in a state that had extremely, extremely lax laws for tattoo and body piercing. Like, really I can't state this enough, like, lax laws and legislation. And a lot of people were getting hurt, and there were a lot of things going wrong, and I reached out to the health department, and I was like, hey, I'd like to, like, volunteer my time and help with this. I spoke with people from other states who had been able to get laws changed and new things changed. I, like, filed petitions. I did all of this stuff. I finally got a meeting with someone in the environmental health department who helps with legislation and regulation, and I spoke with them about it and, like, what my goals were and what I was seeing happen and the ways I was seeing people get hurt and the ways I was seeing clients get hurt, and even the ways people were hurt trying to access the industry, like apprenticeship fraud and unpaid education and wage theft and things like that. And the person I spoke with was very sweet and heard me out and agreed with everything I said, and then said, listen, the legislature only hears a certain amount of, like, proposals and submissions and regulatory changes a year. And I'm just going to be honest with you, they don't care about tattoo piercing. They care a little bit about tattooing, and our hope in, like, a couple of years was to improve the legislation surrounding tattoo apprenticeships, not because they actually really cared about tattoo apprentices, but because apprenticeship fraud was becoming so rampant that they did care about the financial fraud and the wage fraud that was happening there. And they were like, that's our goal, like, in a couple of years from now, but you're not going to get any health and safety regulations put in. And I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, why wouldn't I? And they were like, yeah, so the legislators, all of them kind of think tattoos and piercings are dumb, and just would prefer people didn't get them and don't want to waste their time on something like this. And I was able to petition for minutes and records from previous like sessions and previous hearings. And one legislator in that state, like years ago, on a petition for changing regulation for body piercing, literally said that it was savage behavior and unchristian to modify the body that God gave you, and he didn't have any interest in hearing anything else about laws for this. So, you know, tight. And to my knowledge, at the time of filming this video, that state still has incredibly lax regulations for tattoos and piercings. And a lot of it is rooted in these old laws and old practices trying to wipe out tattoo and piercing on North America from Indigenous Americans. And we don't... And we can't pretend that that doesn't exist, and that isn't part of the history, and that isn't part of why you have requirements for being a hairstylist or a massage therapist or even, like, doing esthetician work. And there's hardly any states with requirements like this for piercing, or the areas where they have those requirements are extremely lax. And 1000%, like, if you trace these laws back far enough, it comes to the Indian Act, and it comes to the laws that were written to remove culture from Indigenous North Americans, and it comes from kill the savage, save the man, which is a disgusting phrase that meant kill the Indigenous culture and turn them into a good puritanical man. And that is still what informs a lot of the legality that structures this industry in North America today. So if you live in one of those states with incredibly lax regulations or no regulations, there's still some states with no laws on the book about body piercing. That does not mean that then in your state, you're like, okay, yeah, cool, I can learn to pierce in 4 weeks and I'll be a fine piercer. It's up to us to do better. It's up to us to demand better. It's up to us to say, okay, my state may have really shitty and lax regulations, but I'm still going to learn the right way. I'm still going to get comprehensive education. I'm still going to do this safely. And I'm going to learn about the history of this practice and the people whose land I am on and the people who were here before me and the way this practice was stolen from them. And then I'm going to volunteer my time, volunteer my energy and my effort to try and make meaningful and impactful change. And maybe that looks like creating accessible piercing services for people in your community. Maybe it looks like working with other piercers to petition lawmakers and get changes on the books. Maybe it just looks like offering a paid apprenticeship and living wages to the people who work in your studio. It can look like a lot of different things. But if you are interested in getting into or being in this industry and you are either trying to justify doing a short apprenticeship or a course, or trying to justify why, well, my state has really, really lax laws, so like, why can't I just do that? I think you really need to look at the history of this practice in North America. You really need to ask yourself why you want to do this. And you also really need to ask yourself, knowing the incredibly racist history behind some of these practices in North America, what am I going to do if I get into the industry to try and help make that better, to try and help change that, to try and help improve that? Because we have enough people in the industry who are willing to ignore and overlook that past, or willing to say that, well, it doesn't affect them and they just care about doing piercings and they just want a cool job. What we do need more of is people who are sympathetic to what has happened in the past, who want to make a difference, who want to make a change, and who want to say, okay, the minimum requirements in my area are shitty and not good enough. I'm going to go above and beyond because that's what my clients deserve. Because they deserve someone who's safe and properly educated with their body. I'm going to go above and beyond because that's what the history of this practice deserves. So yeah, there are some states with incredibly lax regulation when it comes to piercings, where you could probably get away with taking a couple week-long course and being like, I'm a body piercer, and it would be legal in that state. Then you're just supporting the same shitty laws that, 80 years ago said that indigenous people just couldn't get tattooed and pierced. And the same shitty lawmakers who call what we do savage and uncivilized and ugly. And I think if we want there to be a meaningful change, we as an industry have to show that there should be meaningful change. We need to have our health inspectors coming into our studios and having their jaw drop because of how clean, how modern, how safe it is. I need to be educating my health inspector about how advanced my autoclave is and why it works for what I'm using, and telling them, I think you should go back and talk to your bosses and talk to the people you work with and say, we should be enforcing higher standards. We should be aware of this. And you know what? That works. That works. I have watched people go into states where they have no information for piercers to work disposable or work to certain degrees of safety, and educate their health inspectors about it and get their health inspectors on board, and slowly over time make meaningful change in health and safety standards that way. That is how some states got minimum standards regarding jewelry usage. That's how some states got minimum standards regarding wearing sterile gloves to pierce. And I think it is worth it. And I think our clients' bodies are worth it. And I think this industry and this career is worth it. And I also think this ritual is worth it. And I think a very powerful thing we can do as body piercers is show that body piercing is here to stay, and that all of those efforts to colonize it away and get people to stop tattooing and piercing and modifying their bodies have not worked, will not work. It didn't work on Druidic societies in Europe. It didn't work on indigenous cultures here in North America. It didn't work on indigenous cultures of South America, and it didn't work on indigenous cultures of Africa and Asia. And it's simply not going to work. These cultures will survive. They will thrive. These practices may change the way they look, but they will survive and thrive. And I think that is an incredibly powerful act of rebellion. So to the people who think maybe they can justify taking a week-long or 2-week-long course because regulations are crappy in their state, I challenge you to do better, to be better, and to maybe take this as a learning opportunity to deep dive into the history of legislation surrounding tattoo and body piercing, because it's something that we should all know about. And it's also really dark. But yeah, I'll be interested to hear what people say in the comments of this one. Would we want to see like a formal, structured, researched video about this? Because making this little chatty guide with me kind of makes me want to do a deep dive into legislation surrounding body piercing in North America, and I think that is a topic that not enough people know about, but it's also a spicy one, so I'll be interested to hear people's thoughts. Thanks so much for sitting down and chatting with me while I got ready today, and I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Bye!